Welcome to the Contractor Edge, the show where we break down the strategies, tactics, and tools that you need to grow your home service business. Whether you're in a truck or at the office, we're here to give you the edge that you need to win. I'm Mike Stiers.
I'm Anthony Brown.
This episode's all about KPIs. These are the numbers that drive your marketing engine. So, Anthony, why don't you get us started with the edge of the week?
I'm excited for this one. So the edge of the week this week is the power of branding. Your brand is working even when you're not. So whether you're running Facebook ads, knocking on doors, shaking hands in the home, your branding is either building trust or creating doubt. So why does branding matter so much? 81% of consumers say that they need to trust a brand before buying from it. So it's 81%, that's a lot. Companies that maintain brand consistency can grow revenue by 10 to 20%. And first impressions happen so quickly. They can happen in less than a second. And they usually start with your logo, your trucks, your uniforms, and your online presence. It's really, where is that first opportunity for somebody to come across like your identity, right? And a lot of the time it's that billboard level of stuff. They see you from afar, right? So they're seeing your Google business profile. They're seeing those trucks. They saw you in their neighborhood with a yard sign. For contractors, whether it's in a wrapped truck, a branded yard sign, a Google ad, your brand sets the tone before anyone picks up the phone. I did not mean for that to rhyme. It impacts your click-through rates, your appointment set rates, your close rates, and even your average ticket. If you want your marketing KPIs to improve, your branding better match the quality of your service.
So true. I mean, we talk about that. That's kind of like on a daily basis for us, with our clients as well as prospects. We understand. I mean, the brand is everything, and I always get excited when we get a company that comes to us and 20 plus years in service. They've got a website that's 10 to 15 years old. It's a logo. It looks like it was done in like Microsoft Paint.
Yes. The presets too.
Yep. And that's always the interesting thing too, because when you start talking to them about like their trucks, I mean, are your trucks branded? Well, and then you find out, well, it's literally the name written in script with a telephone number. And what do you feel from that? You don't feel. And the unfortunate part is that those are typically the companies that they aren't, marketing and advertising appropriately. And, when we're kind of able to get involved there, we just see such a big change because we know, okay, you have a brand story. Let's tell it. This might be an evolution of your logo and, bringing your brand colors forward. And then you get a truck wrap. And now all of a sudden people are like, man, yeah, you can really rely on these people because they've been in business so long. But they remember your branding too. And that's the biggest piece of like, oh, it's just trying to get that to stick.
Yeah. And like every bit of investment in brand that works, obviously, like if it works, it eases the reliance on every other part of that journey. So if you have a super powerful brand and everybody in your community already kind of knows to trust you, when your salesperson enters that home, the heavy lifting has been done for them. When you show up in that listing for an auction, not to talk about Google again, but if you show up in that listing, sometimes you've already won that click or that bid because they know who you are. So it just goes to show branding permeates through everything.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And for our listeners, Anthony and I had a good laugh, in talking about what our topic was going to be this week and, how we could bring some helpful insights. And the agreement was we weren't going to talk about Google. So, maybe like in the post-production, the wonderful Alyssa might take care of it and hit like a buzzer, whenever that
Yes,
that
yes.
word
Start
is
using
said.
the radio beeps,
Beep. Yep. Let's do it. All right. Well, I want to get into the beef of the show because we've obviously got a lot to talk about. I'll do my best to explain, Anthony, please, feel free to kind of jump in here as we work through this. But this is really, one of the most important parts for every business is just understanding like marketing KPIs, because this is essentially, what really drives the revenue. So this is going to be, part one of a two-part series where we're talking about KPIs. We're going to focus on marketing and advertising on this side for part one. These are the numbers that, really let us know if the lead engine is efficient, if the budget is working, or how many leads that, the company actually needs to hit those revenue targets. Part two is a fun one as well. And, that's really going to be on call center and sales KPIs. Um, there might even be a part three. Anthony's kind of pushing me, hey, we got to talk about the installation side. So,
Hmm.
that's kind of out of my wheelhouse. So maybe we'll have a special guest kind of help us through there. We really only try to talk about the topics that we're subject matter experts on, but I
Or phone a
understand
friend.
the value. So, uh,
Good.
but when we're looking at the KPIs, and if anyone's talked to me for a short period of time, I'm always hitting KPIs. And, when we kind of look at this, we've got 8 critical marketing KPIs for contractors. And, the first one is your cost per lead. And I'm an acronym guy, so I'm like, oh, CPL. So, cost per lead, that's how much you're paying for the inquiry. So, that's your phone call, that's your form fill. You're kind of figuring things out from there. Obviously, then the next goal is going to be getting into your cost per appointment set.
Mhm.
So that's how much it actually costs to get that lead onto an appointment on your calendar. It kind of segues into your cost per appointment run. So that's how much does it cost to, run this appointment, when it actually
Mhm.
happens. Next is your cost per sale. So that's your total marketing cost divided by the number of jobs that you close. Then we've got your revenue per sale. So that's your average customer value essentially. So when you're going out to the home, you're selling the job. What is that average that you're bringing back to home base?
Mhm.
Then we've got your ROAS, so return on ad spend. This is a big one because this is really kind of like one of those points that lets us know if we can accelerate or if we need to start braking. So, this is revenue divided by ad spend. A 10x, you'll hear us refer to a 10x. Some people look at a percentage, but on ROAS, we look at an X. So 10x return is the standard that we shoot for. Then we've got your marketing percentage. Most people are used to this. This is, your marketing spend divided by your revenue. So
Mhm.
10% is kind of that sweet spot for growth that we see.
Mhm.
And then you've got your ROI, so your return on investment. And that's how much actual profit is your marketing, efforts bringing back into your company. So,
I wanted to add one more for you,
oh,
Mike. I actually just thought about this because, like, we set up this example to talk about a very particular type of business, but I realized there's another like per sale or like value KPI that's really important for contracting businesses that have recurring like interactions with customers, and so that's
absolutely.
lifetime customer value. So
Yep.
if you're that landscaper, that plumber, like you have some type of recurring service that you do, also consider what is the lifetime value of a customer.
Oh yeah, I mean our carpet cleaners, duct cleaners,
Mhm.
obviously they love that because you kind of spend up to acquire the customer and then you give them just an outstanding, treatment and experience and then they keep coming back. So you're right, that
Mhm.
lifetime value can be extraordinary, in
Yep,
the reoccurring services. Especially, I mean, if you are a foundation repair company, you should really roll in some annual maintenance service.
you really
That's
should.
one of the things that we typically suggest so that you can get the reoccurring, and then it's an opportunity to just keep on talking to that homeowner. Um, so no, great suggestion. I appreciate it. So now let's look at what are like real life healthy KPIs. So I was mentioning to Anthony, before we started the show, I kind of just want to lean into the foundation repair because it would be incredibly difficult for us to slice this thing, 7 to 10 ways and start going into like roofing and exterior remodeling. And so for this, just for the sake of having some numbers that we can, kind of run by, we're using foundation repair. So typical real life KPIs that we see on a regular basis, $250 average cost per lead. We really like to set the appointment set rate at 90%. So, as you're getting these, leads in, so they're actual
Mhm.
true leads, phone calls and form fills, we'd like to see 90%, get on your schedule. And then, 95% of those need to run. You shouldn't have it dropping off. If you do, obviously there's an issue. People are waiting too long. You
Hmm.
didn't really sell it, and drive it home that, they're going to get a great inspection from you. So that's where
Hmm.
we always say like that appointment set rate needs to be really high. Um, then you got your close rate, based on your appointments run, and we'd like to see that, 30%, just for this ballpark scenario. About $10,000 average revenue per sale. Obviously, we've seen jobs, 50,000 and up, on the foundation repair side, and we've seen some pretty small jobs. Maybe you just go in and put some carbon fiber on the wall and call it a day. But 10,000 is the number we're going to work with. And then 10% marketing budget. It's always a sweet spot, and you'll see as we kind of go through this how it aligns with the return on ad spend. So, for the example, that we wanted to run through here, it's really, let's say you have a goal, $300,000 is your revenue goal for the month. And when you start working through utilizing those base KPIs, that's 30 jobs. And, because we said $10,000 is your average ticket. So you're going to need 100 run appointments if your base is going to be 30% close rate. So that means 105 set appointments and then 117, leads. So when we go back and we look at the scenario, the reason why it's important is that if you don't work from your revenue goal and then work backwards, you're going to be way off. Like, what is your target? So
Hmm.
117 leads times that 250 CPL, you're looking at $29,250 for your ad budget. But the way that all aligns there is that you're going to bring in, if everything is operating appropriately and you're hitting all those KPIs, $300,000 of revenue. So,
Yep.
we always say, how is your engine running? How's the machine running? And that's
Hmm.
where we establish these KPIs based on number one, how, our clients are performing. But then we also have benchmarks by industry. So, if you're not tracking the KPIs, then you're flying blind, and that's the most difficult part for Anthony and I, and obviously everyone at Greenbaum Stires. We get so sad when we know that there are companies that are spending money to generate opportunities and they've got goals, but they aren't measuring, the KPIs. And KPIs are accountability, they're barometers. They give us a great indication. It's like anything's kind of off, and we quickly know, okay, this is what we're looking at.
Hmm.
And for us, it's exciting. The last piece that I've got in there, it's really coming down to like what is ROAS versus marketing percentage, and it is a balancing act. And when we look at that correlation, your return on ad spend is the revenue divided by your marketing spend.
Hmm.
The marketing percentage is the marketing spend divided by revenue multiplied by 100. So if your marketing percentage is 10%, then that means that you're spending a dollar to make $10. And that, your ROAS is 10x. And so that's obviously the most exciting for us. We do have some scenarios where we have clients that are very focused on efficiency, and we understand that as well. And typically they're well-established companies. They can spend a little bit, lower percentage, or maybe they don't have a lot of competition. So if the marketing percentage is 5%, then they're spending a dollar to make $20 in revenue. So at that time, the ROAS is 20x. So
Figured it.
yeah,
Oh,
which
I was gonna say
we
it felt like a good opportunity to say that 5% marketing spend person who's getting away with it and growing, that's a person with a super powerful brand. So just thought
yes.
I'd throw that out
Yeah,
there.
well, I mean, bring back the edge, and that's why
Yeah.
we always laugh because that is a real scenario, for us at the agency, is that we understand that power of branding, and I know that client that we're both kind of referencing
Yeah.
has built that brand, built the
What
brand.
was it? Was it 61% growth year over year and 4.7% marketing percentage?
Yes, because it was under 5%, and
Yeah.
that was it's interesting, very very interesting, but a very powerful brand. One that, in my opinion, is built on an individual that is, taking all of his morals and values and putting that out in the brand, and has built this army of amazing team members that
Through
also,
accountability, right? Like,
yeah,
because
it
you
is.
have to adhere to the brand. You have to represent him, his company, his morals, his beliefs, and that is how you get this consistent experience that customers love, and it returns that value back to your business.
Yep. No, 100%. So, to wrap up my portion here, I mean, essentially you want to find a balance. And
Hmm.
for us, what we're seeing and typically what we're coaching in our consulting is that most contractors should aim for 10% marketing because that's a 10x ROAS.
Hmm.
It really seems to be this predictable spot. It helps with sustainable growth. We do understand that there are times when someone's going to want to be, maybe a bit more conservative. And,
Hmm.
then there's also these times where, we've got several clients that want to be more aggressive and,
Hmm.
they're competing against juggernauts, like Groundworks, where 10% probably isn't going to cut it. And, the goal of a lot of these, really big, PE firms is to kind of choke out the competition and they're willing to spend up. So, you know, to defend yourself, we have seen instances where we're kind of climbing up that rung to be aggressive
Hmm.
and get those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to point out one thing, just because like we're using these numbers for an exercise, obviously. I don't want it to scare anybody off. Like the cost per lead, that is a very realistic cost per lead for this industry. But where your leads come from is indicative of what the cost per lead is going to be. If you're measuring this against like an Angie's List or a Modernize or like anything like that, these leads are going to sound expensive to you. But you can run this calculation, this exercise with whatever lead source that you want. Plug in that, $100 Angie lead. Do this exact same exercise. Recognize that your lead to appointment ratio is going to be a lot lower. And like you'll recognize that, but you can still hit, like, the end of the day, the target that you're going after is the ROAS, right?
Yeah.
Marketing
I,
percentage is uh like it's a derivative of that goal of the return that you're trying to get out of your marketing. So your marketing percentage, 10 to 10 is really good for marketing percentage and ROAS, but really what you're after is the 10 ROAS and like where that marketing percentage falls in order to hit that target. So.
for sure. No, and I love the fact that you brought up, lead source. And, I mean, obviously I can dip back into, my basement doctor days. And our lead source report was crazy because, I mean, there were times when we might have up to 50 lead sources. And what you have to do, and, this is just a tip for, anybody that's listening that is trying to understand, what lead sources they might need to push harder in, or maybe there's a reallocation if one's kind of underperforming. But the big thing that Ron always, helped me understand, and he taught me some lessons, so maybe we can talk about those in future episodes. But if you're if you get a benchmark, right? So you establish what your overall average is across the board, appointments set, appointments run, average ticket, close rate, everything. Then you do have to factor in that cost per lead and you work through that entire equation because you need to understand your ROAS for each of these things. And
Mhm.
if you go back and you're like, oh man, I like Angie's List because these leads are, 50 to $100 per. Well, then you start running the scenario, and I'm going to tell you, this is speaking from experience, saw it firsthand. I've seen it time and time again. You know, Angie's List leads are closing in the low teens, and the average ticket is typically, I don't know, if your typical average ticket is $10,000 for leads that you're generating, when you got an Angie's List, you might be about 5K. And your close rate's low. So then you start looking at your ROAS and you're like, holy crap, my ad spend's so high.
Mhm.
Like the marketing spend is too high, and then your ROAS is so low. And that when you start looking at across the lead sources, sometimes it's a necessary evil. If you have hit, a point of diminishing returns with your other lead sources, or it's a difficult time, a highly competitive area, leads can become scarce. And
Mhm.
sometimes you do need these aggregators. And so, they're sometimes a necessary evil, but, uh, that's like we've seen it. We experienced it firsthand, and that's why obviously diversifying into as many different lead sources as possible is incredibly important.
Yeah, and then measuring each of these, so that you know who really is your biggest winner. Because if you try to run that calculation we just gave you one for one across the other lead sources, you're going to get a whole mess, right? Like it needs to be modified to match like what platform you're utilizing. Meta is another good example where Meta is going to be way like that cost per lead that we just showed you. It's way lower than that if you're using Meta. And that's because Meta is not really made for lead generation. Like when we're doing it, we are, flexing our expertise in finding the right audiences, putting the right creative in front of them, and then getting that lead at the end of the day. And you're going to get it for a lot less, but less often will those end up on your schedule. So you have to, tweak those numbers to make sure you're still getting to that ROAS that you're after. So I want to go into more of the key insights around these particular KPIs. A low marketing percentage with a high ROAS often means that you're under investing and leaving money on the table. So that's an example. We were talking about that client earlier. We were under 5% in marketing. I think we were over 20 at ROAS, but like at that moment, all we were thinking is the speed limit says 100 and you want to go 30, right? Like there's money being left on the table. A high marketing percentage with a low ROAS means that your strategy is inefficient. You're spending more than what you're earning. And really, this is a sign, not that your marketing isn't working, that it could work better, right? So you start looking and see, and sometimes it's not the marketing. I actually don't want to leave it at the marketing.
That's fair.
Like 4 or 5 of those KPIs have nothing to do with marketing. That's your team. That's your call center. That's your salespeople. So like figure out where in that equation you can get the most return for improvement. If your people are at 20% closing ratio, you probably need to get them to 30. Let's focus on the coaching and the resources that can help you get over that hump. If your lead to appointment ratio is like 80%, like maybe you need to hire a second person in your call center. Maybe they're handling too many calls. Maybe you aren't being able to answer that call the moment that it comes in. And so that lead goes a little bit cold before you ever get them back. They're not as willing to set an appointment. Maybe they set with your competitor because of that time that you left on the table, right? So identify where in that the equation isn't working for your ROAS, and then make that fix. A consistent ROAS with rising revenue equals healthy scaling. So that is what you are after. That is the end goal and it should be all of your strategies is firstly finding consistency through measurement, because that way you'll know what's working and what's not working, when to accelerate, when to decelerate. It makes those business owner decisions so much more easy. When can I hire on a new person for production? When can I get another full crew or vehicle? Or when can I do that next order for materials? These signals will tell you when is the right time for that. So if you fall in adherence with this, it makes some of the stressful things I would assume, I've never owned a business, but some of the things that I would assume would be stressful, a lot easier for you because you know when to pull the trigger on things like that. A falling ROAS with the same budget means ad fatigue, poor branding, or weak sales performance. So look at where you are at and then try to contextualize it. Try to figure out the why so that you can figure out what needs to be done. A marketing percentage should align with your goal. So this is my stoplight analogy. I love analogies. We love analogies here. Okay.
We love them.
Marketing percentage, it's another really good way at a glance. Like somebody can just see your revenue report and, look at that bottom line and it says, this is what your marketing percentage is. This is what your growth was year over year. Those two things say so much without getting into the particulars. If you're at a 7% marketing spend and you're hitting your ROAS goal, that means maintain. That's a green light. That can even be a signal to accelerate. Okay. 10% means that you are in lockstep with a good, consistent strategy. If you're able to hold that consistently, stay where you're at, keep doing what you're doing. If you get over 13% on that marketing percentage, You need to be dominating the market. First of all, that has to be the result of it. But it's also a sign that you need to slow down. Like going up to 20% might not result in you growing. It might just result in you becoming less efficient. So look for those signals in your own numbers. Are you at a green light? Are you at a yellow light? Are you at a red light? And if you're at the red or the yellow, figure out the reason why by using those KPIs that we just showed you, reverse engineering from your goals. So if it's your appointment center, revise your scripts, look for other resources to help that experience be better for the customer trying to get a hold of you, right? If it's your sales team, same thing, and just identify where there's opportunity to improve and go from there.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, I love your analogy because it's so funny, internally, with the agency, with the majority of our clients, we've got these really crazy spreadsheets that we've, built over the years. We've modified them based on, different things that we've learned. And, Anthony and I are really big on showing the relationship and marriage between the marketing, the advertising, the call center, and then the sales side. And when you color code certain expectations based on these KPIs, you have to do this as a business owner, or if you're the marketing director, this is your responsibility. You need to have alignment to the company's goals and then the performance metrics that need to be driven because
Mhm.
we say this all the time. This is for accountability purposes. This is a really quick indicator that things are either going very well, and you need to study that and figure out what it is that's going really well, and is it something you can chase to continue the improvement, or is there a problem? And now looking at all of these KPIs, we have 8 listed, Anthony's thrown, number 9 in there, and I completely agree. But it's
Mhm.
understanding quickly what is responsible for this downturn, and where is the resistance, and you can quickly identify what these problems are and then counter them quickly. And that we obviously look on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, an annual basis, but this is something that the business owners, the marketing directors, you should be analyzing this. You should establish this. You should have a shared sheet where you're putting all of your marketing and advertising attribution, as well as every bit of performance metrics, and establish these KPIs, and you will quickly realize how much it will help your business.
Mm-hmm. And like showing it, like just having visibility of this for your team is going to help them improve too.
Oh,
There's a
completely.
reason why there are, scorecards and grades and stuff in every educational institution you've ever heard of. It's because people know what their targets are. It's the same thing for your revenue. If you don't set a revenue goal, chances are you're not going to hit it, right?
Right.
If you don't set a KPI for the different departments in your business, you're not going to know why it is or isn't working, and your business will falter in some way because of that. Even if you're still growing, it's one of those things I said at a previous podcast, you could be doing better, and you have to be able to like see those opportunities. Just to wrap up the insights I was talking about here, if you know your ROAS, you can control your marketing percentage. If you know your marketing percentage, you can predict your return. Don't guess, track both of these every month and make decisions like a CEO, not just a contractor. Beautiful. I love this topic this week, by the way. Pro tip of the week, build your KPI engine backwards. So I kind of teased this a couple times in the back and forth in our last 2 sections. You need to most contractors start with a marketing budget and hope that it gets them the revenue that they need. You need to work in the other direction. First of all, there's a lot of things that go into setting a marketing budget, and it's not about how much you want to spend. That's actually the least important thing in considering what a good marketing budget is for your business. So you should start with your sales goal and work your way back to using actual performance metrics from your business. This lets you build a predictable system instead of running on guesswork. So the benchmarks that we use is average revenue per sale. We're still using that example of a foundation repair company. So your target value for that would be $10,000. For every sale that you get, it should average $10,000. This is a realistic average for full scope foundation repair or crawl space encapsulation. Close rate is the next big important one. For this industry, 30%. For most home service industries, I'd say 30% is a good mark to go for. If you have like lower ticket, you need to have a higher closing percentage. So like just think of that in your head. Work backwards from 10,000. It's a nice, even, easy number. Go down to 8, go down to 6, go down to 4, and think to yourself, how high should my closing ratio be? Obviously, it's going to depend on how much you're paying per lead, but
Oh yeah, and
this
the
is an
opposite of that is
example.
so true. I mean, we've obviously got some remodeling companies that, when you look at their average ticket, it just like it blows your mind. And
Mhm.
these things typically start at like 50K and go up, beyond 100K, and they're closing, in the 20% range,
Mhm.
but it all shakes out. It all makes sense. They've established what the target, cost per lead is, and they know what their close percentage is.
And
And
as long as you do that exercise, you're going to
yes.
know what your successful one is. So we set 30 for this. 22 might be what you need to hit. Like you
Mhm.
have to go through this exercise and figure out what is that that golden ratio for your business, for your industry, for your market. 30% solid performance for trained in-home sales teams. Appointment run rate. So that's 95%. Appointment run rate means of the appointments that you set, how many of them did you actually get to go through on? So really, it's a reverse of your cancellation rate, right? Best in class, like well-running call centers can achieve this 95%. You think about the confirmation of appointments, think of your pre-inspection, like literature or communications. These are things that you can do to help improve. If I've set these people onto my schedule, what is the chance they're canceling? The biggest influence on that is obviously your backlog. So
It
just
is.
that's why, Mike, I wanted to talk about, like, for a part 3,
Mhm.
doing like production, like what is a good backlog for, what services. Like it's another metric that works against your marketing efforts if it is not dialed in, if it's not refined. If you're booking jobs 5 weeks out, your lead cost is no longer efficient. I'm sorry, like that's just the
Right.
truth.
That's right.
Appointment set rate. So 90%. This is of the leads that call or fill out a form. They inquire about doing business with you. How often do you set those people onto your schedule? This can also be impacted by what your backlog looks like, right? For the same reason as the appointment run rate. If you are trying to book people 5-6 weeks out, it's something that feels urgent to that homeowner. They're hanging up the phone and they're calling your competitor. So just find the right balance, do these exercises, and figure out what is a sweet spot that you're getting the most out of your marketing, out of your efforts, out of your branding. That when people want to do business with you, you can still help them. And then cost per lead, right? Everyone loves cost per lead. That's why we listed it last. Okay,
Last.
you need to pay attention to all of these other things. We know your cost per lead. Okay, so in this industry, it's $250, and then I did give that caveat earlier. This is from a like a self-built ecosystem. This isn't you purchasing leads. These are leads. Well, in a sense, this isn't you purchasing leads from an aggregator, right? This is you building your own ecosystem, investing in your own marketing, and getting that lead. So $250. It's an industry healthy benchmark for quality lead sources in like between 2024, 2025. Obviously, everything rises over the years. We found that we can stay pretty steady at 250 right now, though. So, but remember, this is unique to your vertical, like your business like category. It's independent to your market. If you are in Nashville, if you're in Chicago, if you're in LA, like your cost per leads are going to be higher. You just have more competition, right? So
Yes.
you'll have to do the same exact equation. If that says 300 on yours, you just have to move the numbers somewhere else. If it costs 300 to get that lead, you got to get the lead, right? Maybe we need 1% higher out of your sales team. Maybe we need 1% higher out of your call center. Beautiful. So here is how you do this exercise, right? This is what I want you to do with your goal. This is a little bit of homework for the listeners out there. Okay,
Mhm.
start with your monthly revenue goal. Start small. Don't try to do a whole year, right? Don't even try to do a whole quarter. Start small. Uh, Look at your monthly revenue goal. Let's say that you want to do $300,000 in sales for, we'll say July, since we're in July now.
Yep.
Divide by your average revenue per sale, right? So that $10,000, how many $10,000 jobs do I need to close in order to hit my $300,000 goal? Obviously, that's 30. We used easy numbers for me. I swear I'm not bad at math. But I, and so you need 30 sales. Divide by your closing rate to determine how many appointments run you need to have in that month, right? So if your sales team closes at 30%, you'll need to run about 100 appointments to get that 30 sales. In order to run 100 appointments, if you're at that 95% appointment run rate, you need to set about 105 appointments. Now you need to factor in your set rate for the leads to figure out how many leads do you need to get. So if you're setting 90% of the leads that come in, you need 117 leads in July in order to hit 300K in revenue. Multiply the leads needed by your cost per lead. If your cost per lead is $250, that 117 leads would cost you $29,250. That is the ad budget that you need to target for that month in order to hit your revenue goal. So I can't express enough. I bet all of you, you're all business owners. You've all dabbled in marketing. You've all wasted $5,000 somewhere. You did
Mhm.
it. I know you did it. You're like, oh, this radio, it sounds great. It's only $5,000. Oh, let's do this thing. It's only $5,000. Only $5,000 is only $5,000 until it's $500,000. You can do that over and over and over again, and it have no return for you. This exercise shows you a realistic roadmap for hitting your actual goals, not dabbling with, what sounds hot on the market right now. And really, what ends up happening is somebody markets to you about a marketing product, and then you buy the marketing product, but you don't do this exercise, and you end up getting jaded on that marketing product for
Yep.
years to come. So it's something we experience as an agency all the time. That people are like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I've tried TV. I know it doesn't work. How much you want to bet you tried it for $5,000 when your budget needed to be 30?" So like just think of that when you're making your next marketing decision. Why this matters: if your cost per lead creeps up, your ad budget goes up. If your close rate drops, you need more leads to hit the same goal. But if your team improves performance, even a 5% boost in close rate or set rate, you could save thousands of dollars a month in ad spend. So run through this exercise, move the different variables, and figure out what seems realistic to you and what you want to chase after, right? Like, can I do 30% closing ratio? I'm at 28%. That's 2%. Go get that. It's July, Independence. I don't know. Just do a Mel Gibson roar and go and get those sales. Okay. And that is how you're going to save yourself money. Don't look to save yourself on the investment. Look to save yourself on the return. Like if you improve those metrics on your, like, I have the same 100 leads. Can I get 5 more appointments out of those 100 leads? If I get 5 more appointments, I'm getting at least 1 more sale out of it. I might even get 2 sales out of that because of that average at 30%. And because of that, you just saved yourself that $5,000. So this is where marketing meets math and the difference between controlling your growth and just hoping for good weeks. And yeah, in foundation repair and basement waterproofing, you really can luck out. You
Yeah.
get hit by, what was it last year? North Carolina hit by a hurricane.
Oh
Didn't
yeah, hit by a
destroy
hurricane.
everything,
Yeah.
but it created the best environment in the world for that type of home service business, right? It's like
Yep.
everyone needs you to come take care of their house now. You cannot wait and hope for those things. That's not how you run a consistent business. That's not how you do scalable growth. So just remember that.
Yeah, and it's really the same. I mean, like you can think about different aspects where there's such a high degree of impact, on the home service side of like roofing, for example. Roofing, you need to establish these KPIs and you need to budget and plan accordingly and then measure effectively. But you are going to have these act of God opportunities where, I mean, unfortunately, some storms go through, they rip some things up, and then, thankfully, you're the trusted contractor that comes in and fixes everything. And, that's just the nature of the beast. And, when you're looking at, the opposite side of, where we're actually looking on the home improvement side of things. The home improvement side is a bit more methodical. It is not necessarily as impacted by the act of God. Because you're talking about certain scenarios, we see those are more impacted by like the economic conditions.
Hmm.
But these are still, for the most part, predictable. And that, like, I love your point of, being able to measure all of this and then you control that. And we've seen scenarios where there's been uncontrolled growth, and this is the scariest part, is when we do talk to a company and they've already determined marketing and advertising budget, but they
Hmm.
didn't necessarily know their KPIs. They
Hmm.
were just hoping that, well, 10% of my goal means that I should be able to achieve this. Well, then you start looking at the KPIs and you're like, whoa, you'll probably do the same number that you did last year based on that budget. And,
Hmm.
that's because of the competitive nature and the fact that you're not measuring all of these aspects. And, that kind of, takes us into part two of this series, which I'm incredibly excited about because I feel like the power of the call center and the impact that it can have on your business. I mean, we always, obviously, you talk about marketing and advertising, lead gen. Then we always talk about the sales guys, and everybody loves the sales guys, and they're getting
Hmm.
their commission, they're pumping through the sales. But the call center is often undervalued,
Hmm.
and establishing these KPIs, detailed job descriptions, and really understanding. I mean, like you and I, we talk about these scenarios where we know that the business owner is investing a certain amount in their marketing and advertising. We know that the goal is to get a certain number of leads, but if the call center is not providing these metrics transparently and also not receiving any kind of guidance or accountability, we watch that become probably one of the biggest holes in the bucket.
Hmm.
Because when we get our reports and there's no leads, all we see is appointment set and appointments run. Well,
Hmm.
then it's like, there's no way that call center set 100% of the inquiries that came in.
Give him
But
a ribbon trophy.
yeah,
That's incredible. Well, and we did this exercise last year. Actually, this was your idea, Mike. And this guy's an example of how powerful measurement can be for your business. We went to a couple of our new clients last year and then a couple of our legacy clients last year, and we showed them, hey, we're not trying to rag on your call center staff, but here are some numbers. This is what your numbers came out to this year, right? This is what your like lead to appointment ratio was, your appointment to run ratio was, your sale conversion, and then we showed them the industry averages, and we said, if you fix this one thing to get you closer to the industry average, and to be honest, 9 out of 10 times it is the call center.
it
Like
is.
that is the opportunity or the most opportunity for
It
you.
is.
It's like, hey, you get this many leads every single week, and you're only able to set this many of them. If you increased that by 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, you can just do this exercise. How much more revenue would you have gotten out of the money you already spent? Nobody asked you to spend any more.
That's
I
right.
actually might have asked you to spend less if you were able to get this up 3%. And it's a really cool eye-opening exercise that I like that you brought up last year, Mike, because I don't think for any of them the number was under $1 million. It's like
I
you
agree
would have
that,
made
yeah,
over
the
$1 million
scenarios.
more
Yep.
this year if you would have moved this one metric by this much. And we're not talking huge swings, guys. We're
No.
talking up 2, 3, 4, 5 points, depending on where you were. That could be a 10% improvement, a 12% improvement from the previous ratio you were running at, right? These are very doable. And most of the time, people under leverage, they under train, they underappreciate that position. And the same way brand is like the very first stop when it comes to like, why should somebody do business with you? Why are you like important? Why should you even be on their radar? That is the first point of contact that any of your customers ever get. Like, how many of your customers really did you get because the neighbor saw you working and it's like you just struck up a conversation? That's going to be some of them, but it's like 80% or more all go through the same channel and they all talk to that same person a lot of the time. And that is your opportunity to create a uniform experience and see that, that efficiency start to turn in your favor.
That's true. And I'm excited because with this part two, we're going to talk about the evolution of the call center from the point when, we call it chucking a truck, but where, the owner operator is doing everything. They're answering the phone calls, they're running the leads, they're installing, they're collecting the funds, they're providing the service on into, okay, well now, my wife is answering, the phone calls. And then you evolve into, okay, now we're actually going to hire a customer service rep. Now we're going to
Mm-hmm.
hire a second one. Now we need to establish our
Mm-hmm.
scripts and, what's our
Mm-hmm.
SOPs and what are our KPIs? And, again, all these acronyms, that's magic, right? But, it's so impactful. And it's probably like one of the biggest things that gets me all jazzed up because I'm like you. I saw the impact of an absolutely incredible call center at the Basement
Mm-hmm.
Doctor. I mean, incredible, wonderful experience. You had the trust. They prepared the project managers that were going to be going out. They were excited to talk to that person when they got to their home. They weren't a stranger. All of these things were very calculated, and I can't wait. We're going to open up the book. We're going to run through these different scenarios. We're going to help you, listeners work on ways to improve your business through the KPIs of the call center. And we'll hit on the sales too. But I'm hoping that with everything that you got, we always say, what is it like drinking through a fire hose?
Yeah.
Anthony and I are trying to, provide you with this information at a pace and an explanation to where you can take it and you can apply it to real world scenarios. We're obviously, always available. We always say reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can go to our agency website, greenbaumstyers.com and, submit a contact form or just give us a call, if you want to have a conversation. We're always excited to, hear from new people and understand, the opportunities, the challenges, kind of just getting different perspectives, in different industries as well. So, with that, I want to thank you for listening to the Contractor's Edge. If you feel like you got value today, just do us a favor. Like, rate, follow, subscribe to the show. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you're listening. It helps us because we want to continue to bring you, tips, tools, and tactics that'll give you the edge to help grow your business. And with that, we're out.